Welcome, welcome. We are live. Let me check and make sure I can see everybody on my cell phone. But welcome to another rendition of Caring Conversations. I am Dr. Keisha. I am so excited. Like, I don't think I fully have the language to really convey how excited I am about our conversation because boy did I come prepared to serve today. Let's see if we're up yet. Can I see that we're live? Thanks to last week, I now know to check before I get fully invested in this. I think we're live. My heart says we're live. Let's see. There we are. Yes, we are live. Okay.
I now know to check before
I'm still learning. Muted. All right, awesome. So I have my phone nearby so I can keep an eye on any comments that may come up, but I am going to dive into it. We have an amazing conversation. Like I was sitting on my couch counting down until it was 8 o'clock because I just could not wait to have this conversation with you all. One of the things that is starting to happen as Caring Conversation gains momentum is that I'm starting to meet all these amazing people. Like, it's beautiful when you put energy out into the world and it draws the right people to you. And I want to acknowledge a new friend of mine by the name of Shannon. I'm just going to say your first name. I owe her platform gratitude because the topic for tonight came out of a conversation. She has a podcast called Powers Through, and I was fortunate enough to be a guest on her show. And while we were talking about early childhood literacy and all of the things that, I'm passionate about, the title for this just came out of me when I said, I get excited because she asked me, what do you get excited about that people might, think is weird? Or like, what's one thing about you that people may think is weird that no one would know? And I told her, I'm like, I get super excited about children's books. And as we talked about it, I just shared with her, the reason why I get so excited around children's books and delving into the books that I pick out and share with you all is because I see books as band-aids. I see stories as opportunities to not only bring adults and children closer, but to mend issues, to really mend bridges, to have conversations about things that may be bothering the child, or to open up pathways to have conversations on things that may be, on the adult's mind. And so when I do these sessions, I pour into the research and I really go through books and I order books, self-funded in every way. But I do it because there's no better way I could think to be of service, to put my credentials and all of the things I've been fortunate enough to accomplish to use than in this platform at this time. So when we talk about using books as band-aids, baby, whoo, get ready because we are going to dive in. So with that being said, let's jump into the materials. And as with every caring conversation, I am here on a live stream. You can see me. It's my birthday. Check out my birthday balloons. Yay! My best friend, one of my best friends, sent me an edible arrangement. I'm starting to learn like how to point. Like, yeah, okay, there you go. That way. I got birthday balloons. So this is the special birthday edition. So that's how you know it's special. Like when I move at certain moments, you can see the 3 balloons. But coming back to you, live stream family, I want you to know that at any time, and that's why I have my phone nearby, at any time in this presentation, in this conversation, in this caring conversation, if you have a question, you're always welcome to, type it out. If you have a comment, you're always welcome to say that as well. So let's talk about today. The overview of what we're going to get into, we are going to talk about frustration. And I don't have to tell you what you already know. We're at that stage in this current normal, not calling it new, not calling it forever. This is a moment. So in this moment, we've got some COVID wear and tear. We've got some pandemic wear and tear because we're dragging on now. This is month 8, or month 6, 7, depending. I kind of start counting from January up until now, but we're moving into the fall months, and we're still dealing with everything we're facing, and people are starting to get frustrated. Our children may be tired of the routine. Some of them rolled off of virtual school, then rolled into virtual summer classes. Now they're getting ready to, jump into virtual fall, or some may be doing in-person instruction through a pod or things like that. But there's a lot, and it's just like one thing after another. And for the adults, the parents, there may be some frustration there too, because we're just layering. There's far more room to pile things off than take them off, right? And so it's just inevitable that friction may occur through small incidents, through unrelated incidents, but we're all dealing with various triggers. And we're going to get into that. Get ready, because boy, did I bring receipts. But we're going to have an in-depth conversation on frustration. I'm going to share with you some research that I have used in past keynotes. I really love, if you don't know by now, I'm all about Harvard Center on the Developing Child. Like, I've been using it since I started my research journey. And I share with you some very interesting data that 2016 is when they came out with some of these graphs. And save that magic. But I do want to point out that it's going to be fascinating as we go through this to think about what it was when this graph was created and how it still applies today, even though they didn't see this moment when they created this research or this graph. And then, of course, the best thing about the Caring Conversations, I am going to talk about the books as actual Band-Aids. And what does that mean, and how we can use stories to begin to mend. Like, once we understand what are some of the deeper issues that are happening when we think about frustration, we're then going to build back up, because it's not just one thing to understand a problem. It's far more useful to walk away with some solutions. So for those of you who are on the live stream, welcome. For those of you who may watch the re-recording, my promise to you in this moment is that I am going to not only help you begin to think differently about frustration, or stop and pause and reflect when these moments happen. I'm going to show you I have 6 curated books that are diverse. The stories are exquisite, and they're going to serve as ways to begin to mend whatever hurt feelings or whatever situations we need to unpack, because a book is not, pixie dust. It doesn't magically make everything okay, but it absolutely creates a space, a powerful space for magical things to happen in terms of social, emotional triggers that the body just naturally does when they're in a loving relationship with at least one supportive and caring adult. That could be an educator, that could be a family member, but all you need is that one and that bond, and that's when the body activates its magic. So yeah, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm here for all of this. Now, one of the things that really center this conversation, as I shared in the beginning, as I continue to do these caring conversations, I am meeting outstanding people through Facebook, through messages, through reading. You know, during the research or staying up on the latest issues, I come across great people. And one of those individuals, again, just say first names. I have recently met an amazing woman by the name of Nikolai. And when I think about why I've always considered myself an ally of parents, and now that I've grown in my knowledge, I would now consider myself a co-conspirator, because I'm about more than the talk. Like, I will put my hand on, the pole and like, hey, Dr. Patina Love, like I will put my hand on the pole and stand up for somebody, really put things on the line. Nikolai and just the work that she's done. And, she has an admin team, but I've had an opportunity just through Facebook to be so amazed by this outstanding woman. She's a mother. She has been doing a lot of work around making sure that Black, Indigenous, people of color, the whole spectrum. A lot of the news and articles right now around, where schooling is going to go in the fall, a lot of language around inequality and equity and all of these things. And on Facebook, there is I think it's called Pandemic Pods, and it's the main page. And the last time I looked, there were like over 31,000 people in that group. And Nikolai was, riding the wave. So Sister Girl was in the group. But, she's conscious, and she's a servant to humanity. And one of the first things she noticed is something a lot of us are starting to look at. There is a swift movement for, some of the terms that come to mind aren't the terms I want to say, but it's almost like we're seeing a shift to regression in terms of inequality. Like, the politically correct way that this is being phrased is that access to who has which resources was already a situation. But now that we're looking at hiring educators, having private classes, the fees for those educators is split amongst the families. So if you can't afford to pay, then it may be an issue with you joining certain groups or having access to certain educators. Say this group has a teacher who's resigned because they're not going to put their life at risk. So now they're going to be, a direct teacher for a private pod. Well, they're going to command a significantly higher salary than, say, someone who's just a concerned volunteer. You're a college student, you're an undergrad student, who knows? Making this up. May not even be a college student. It could be someone who just says, hey, I want to make sure you're educated, right? And so there's a difference there. And so what I really appreciate about Nikolai, and her Instagram page is Raising Readers, and she had this quote up there. What I really appreciate about her is that she said, you know what? I'm going to create a Facebook group that is specifically led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And I'm going to make sure that they have access. And she, there's a whole scope of things. The roses I could give this woman for her vision and just a welcoming spirit, but she's building community online. And as I go further into this presentation, I'm going to show you how and why community is going to be so essential. Because one of the biggest issues we're dealing with this pandemic is isolation and loneliness. And what we know is that it is a detrimental. It has the potential, not on its own, but it has the potential to be a determinant in terms of our own psychological well-being. But by creating virtual community, by creating spaces where you're in connection with people, you allow yourself to buffer in some of the same ways we're going to be using books. But by creating this online community, there's a space, and I'm in this group. I'm in this group doing everything I can, and so are other outstanding individuals. But she has really held up a flag, and she's rallying great people to her. And we're all in this room. I don't keep track of numbers, but there were a few thousand people in there the last time I looked. And we're all trying to figure out, how can we support people? People are like, hey, I'm in such and such place in the United States. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, who wants to link up? And that's how people are happening. Like, that's what community is looking like. And so Latinx parenting said, so many people think kids need discipline, when what they themselves need is some inner child healing and liberation from the internalized oppression programmed by those who discipline them. Kids need guidance and the adults around them to do their inner work. Now, woo, if that ain't a word. So when I read this on Nikolai's Instagram page, I was struck by that last sentence. Kids need guidance and the adults around them to do their inner work. And I said, you know what? That's what I can do as Dr. Keisha. Let me get behind this work. Let me pour into the research. Let me support the community that I am blessed enough to be in. Let me begin to show what the inner work can look like. So yeah, we're going to talk about frustration, but we're going to start with that inner work. Okay? So, this is that time to roll up your sleeves. Now, while we're talking about frustration, I really want you to understand that when you look at frustration, you're really talking about something that is causing you stress, causing you some form of discomfort. And when I think about frustration, particularly within a learning environment, the whole idea of what frustration could mean, because I asked some parents within Nikolai's group, I asked them, what are some things I can do as, someone positioned in early childhood? Like, how can I support you? And one awesome mother was honest enough to say, hey, I feel frustrated. My child feels frustrated and I feel frustrated when we're reading. Like, help us get through this. Like, how do I help her not feel frustrated? And how do I help myself not feel frustrated? So, you have dual, or if you want to use the language, 2-generational frustration in the singular moment of reading, right? So they're having this shared experience, but it's happening on 2 different levels. I want to show you why this might be happening. Now, told you, I like Harvard. So this research is coming out of, and I'll share this in the description, but this research is coming out of their Building Capacities for Life. This is their research that looks at adults, because the Center on the Developing Child doesn't just focus on children, because children don't grow up in an echo chamber. They grow up in a community. So there's always parents. And a lot of times we don't support parents the way that we need to, but that's all right. You got your girl. Now, let's look at how excessive stress affects how we develop and how we use these executive functioning skills. Now, your executive functioning skills, this is something that develops over time. You're not just born with your executive functioning skills. These are things that's sort of like, like any plant, any tree. As you get older, your skill sets get higher because of what you experience, because of how you were taught. If you're reading aloud, then you're having these conversations about, things that happen in the story, and you're relating them to real life. And if you don't know how to do that, get in touch with me and I will definitely walk you through it. Now, if you look at the baby, you'll notice there's an exclamation point, right? That's the primary automatic response. That's sort of like your fight or flight, that knee-jerk reaction. Like some people, if if you hit certain people, think about whoever you want. But if you put your hands on certain people, or since we're talking about parents, everybody relate to this. I would never do this, but because it's my channel and I'm the example, I'm going to put myself on the line. Say I imagine I have some parents on the line. Say, you didn't know me from Adam. And even if you did, we're all at the playground and I might be doing some research, or I might be, teaching some kids, and I'm not watching where I go. And next thing you know, I stumble across your child, or I push your child, or in some way I do harm to your child. And for whatever reason, I'm not in my right mind, I say something flippant. I don't apologize to the child. I'm rude. your instinct as a parent, whether it's to put hands on me in an ungentle way, whether it's to get in my face, whether it's to jump into protective mode, that automatic response, that's your primary automatic response. That's the thing that says, oh, hell no. Yeah, I'm Dr. Keisha. I said that. Oh, hell no. And it might have been something else. But that part of you that responds as strongly as it does, there's no executive functioning skill that slows you down, makes you think. You just automatically respond. Now, in a child during early childhood, if they hurt themselves, if they fall and they look at you and you have a face of concern, next thing you know, they're crying because they're in that primary automatic response. If they stumble and they fall and they look at you and you're like, oh, you're okay, you'll see them sort of ramp back down and be like, yeah, I'm okay. Because that's what you've signaled to them. Because they're not thinking, if you see in this example, in the baby's example, where the gears are, it's smaller. Because that side of their brain isn't as developed as the primary automatic response system. But here's the thing about undealt with stress or unchecked trauma. Look at adulthood, all right? Now say this child is this adult. While this child was in early childhood, they are in a situation where they're constantly yelled at every time they're asked to read. What's this word? And if they get it wrong, they get hit. Or they're forced to keep doing it, and they fear and they have anxiety and fear because there's uncertainty, disappointment. It's not a pleasant experience. And that could be the schoolroom. They could be bullied. They could have, an abhorrent teacher that's just not where they need to be. Or they could be in a situation where they have a sibling or somebody that is exposing them to negative experiences. I use a learning example because this is a learning context, but we know all of the bad things that could happen, right? Now, bad things absolutely happen. Good home, bad home. Things happen. It's a part of life. But the difference in what becomes trauma and what becomes tolerable stress, which is another term we can go into, is that who is there to comfort or support the child? Does that child feel safe, right? So take that child who has the learning example, who has something negative occur around reading. There is, a mom. If it happened at school, there's a parent, there's an aunt, there's someone in the family. If they're following Dr. Keisha Cares, they're reading aloud with the child, and they already have this practice of conversation. And the child, at some point in the story, they see something that, triggers them to talk about an experience that they had. And that one supportive, loving adult comforts that child, encourages that child. The child's body, the brain releases the chemicals, the endorphins that buffer that child from the stress of what that moment did. Now, we could call it growth mindset, we could call it perspective shifting, but that child leaves that moment realizing, I can get through this. I can use something as basic as somebody called you ugly, right? And someone, you told, you might have had your feelings hurt. I went through that. Oh, I got colorism and all of that things. And within my home, my mother always said, you are my beautiful black butterfly. Or, other people say in my home, you are beautiful. You have that champion that buffers you from the stress. And because you love that person and they love you, it's important that your child identify you as a loving form of support. Not just, somebody I see, but they have to believe that you care about them. And that's another reason why this routine of reading aloud is so essential. Because it's one thing that I have a bad day and all of a sudden you want to read aloud to me. I mean, good luck with that. But if it's something we always do, then it's not as though I feel like you're trying to pry information out of me. This is our family routine. And so I know this is a space where I'm to bring conversation, where I get to open up and, we step out of the authority of adult child and we use the story to just equally enjoy the moment. And then we have dialogue within that space. It's almost like you create your own zone. But if that is not regulated, like if this child has those experiences and there is no loving adult, there is no buffer, then what happens when they become an adult? You start to see that if you look at the baby, the executive functioning skills, that green side where the gears are, it's small and it's clearly like a bluish green. But if you look at the adult, well, it's bigger, but that red zone, it's not just in the primary response zone. It's also in the executive functioning skills. And I'll share with you why that's a problem. Oh, I went too fast. Got too excited. That's what data does to me. I get excited about the data. I will show you why that's a problem. So when you have automatic self-regulation, that's that knee-jerk reaction, like, we doing this. We doing this. Whether you're ready or not, we're doing this. But when you have intentional self-regulation, if you go back to my metaphor where I'm on the playground in some mystical way, I have, caused injury to your child and I'm not showing any sense of, empathy or sympathy or remorse. I'm not even pretending to apologize. I got some funky attitude. Then, yeah, I might be shifting. I might be triggering you to go into your automatic self-regulation zone and how you look at this problem. But if you were an adult or if you were a child that had that loving, supportive relationship, your internal self-regulation may be strong enough as to where you think, wait a minute, even though she's acting this way, what are the bigger things that are at risk? Let me think about that. Yeah, I wanna physically let her know how much I didn't appreciate that, but my child is watching. Or look at where we're at. Like, that part of you that makes you pause and reflect. Versus if you don't have those buffers because you didn't have someone teach you these things, or you grew up into an adult whose self-regulation side is far more mature than your internal self-regulation side, you ain't think about none of that. Like, you in the moment. The offenses happened, the responses happened. But if you have intentional self-regulation because you had that loving adult, you had that consistent care, there's more of an idea to stop, pause, reflect. Now, you may still say a few things. I'm not saying you walk away, but you're wiser with how you handle the moment because you have a larger, stronger set of executive functioning skills. And I know I've said a lot, but I want you to know I got you covered. As the slides go forward, I gave a keynote on this very topic in February for the Literacy Center of West Michigan in the before COVID time. Like, who knew that was probably going to be the last one? We had over 200 early childhood educators, superintendents, et cetera, in the room. And this was some of the things I shared with them. But I was talking more about self-regulation, and I went further into that. So if you find these things interesting, I was thinking about you too. Like, happy birthday to us. So check out this slide. Now, this is the one I was talking about in the beginning. Now, no need to explain myself. I told you how I feel about Harvard. What I love about this graph is that you are looking at the brain's ability to change in response to experiences. And I want you to notice, like 2, 4, the area I love, early childhood, you see far more blue. And what that's suggesting is it's much easier for a younger child to change in response to experiences. That could be good or bad. But here's a great example. When we're talking about multilingual children or teaching children to speak different languages or teaching children to learn an instrument, we usually promote starting at a much younger age because it's easier for them to pick it up, right? Well, here's why. Because their brain is far more flexible, far more pliable. We're still going? Making sure I'm still recording. Okay, good deal. Now, as you get older, you notice you start seeing more orange. If we stick with, learning a different language, speaking, playing an instrument, it's a little harder when you start marching past your 30s. Like, it actually starts to, you can still change when you're in your 20s, getting up to your 30s, marching towards your 30s. You still have, you're starting to level out, right? You're starting to level out. But boy, when you start getting into the Dr. Keisha age spectrum, you just start realizing I am who I am. That's what you could say, but you could still change. I'm joking, but change is possible at any age. Change is possible at any age. I meant it so much, I said it twice. Okay? It's just harder for you to start to see the benefits. Like, you may have to remind yourself more than once. You may have to practice a lot harder on getting those tones if it's a different language. You may have to spend far more time working on that instrument because you're older and your brain isn't as flexible. Oh, now it's starting to get fun. Now, I've already showed you, like, look at that. It's going up. And in terms of frustration, okay? Now, again, for your child, you can correct the child, particularly around this early childhood age, this upper elementary age, the area that I love the most. You can easily, now I can hear some parents say, no, I still feel like I'm repeating myself consistently around my child. That may be true. But their ability to respond to what you're saying is still far more flexible than if, and you can ask some of the elders. You can ask my family. Like, there are certain things that as an adult, you could ask me to do. I'm all right, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a fan of cleaning the restroom. And I'm certainly not a fan of doing dishes. Never have been. And as an adult, I make sure I always have a dishwasher. Not going to change that. I go out my way not to wash dishes. I am very fixed in my way. I can still change, but it's not something I'm eager to do. And I'm at that stage now where I'm like, make me. Now, what does this mean in terms of frustration, right? You said I have my kitties on here as illustrations. And as I was putting this slide together, I'm like, I hope other academics in the field don't view this as disrespectful or see it as me like vandalizing or putting graffiti on the graph. But it's a caring conversation, and this information needs to be accessible to you as the way that I see it. I want you to, if I'm all about children's books, like I wanted an illustration, so I made one. So when you look at my little angry kitty on the left, Princess Kitty with the bow and her tongue sticking out, there's a little bit of attitude going on here. There's a revolution. Now, the fact that when they're dealing with frustration, okay, they're dealing with frustration in that age where the brain can still change. The tantrums a child may have through at 1 or 2 or 3, children are different. But let's use the grocery store tantrums. And let's give grace to the parents who are moving up the spectrum and you still see grocery store tantrum. Let's just keep this in a context, okay? So for the grocery store tantrums, it's more common to see that 2, 1-year-old, 4-year-old, maybe 6, I don't know if we're still doing it at 8. But when you see those tantrums, the child may really get lost in that, like full out, fall out. Those things may happen. Remember what I showed you about that primary response system. They are triggered and they're just reacting because that executive functioning, that part of them that's more reflective, that's still growing. And as we get further up this graph, we understand that they still have the ability to learn. So when you're telling them, no, we don't do that, or you let them have that moment and you still don't let them get their way, they remember that. And if they have these sort of moments where I did something, it didn't work, they can adapt much quicker. But as they get older, and this is where I think a lot of the parents who I have the pleasure of, supporting, or I think the ones who watch my materials, this may be the space you find yourself in, that 20 to 40 range, right? And so as you adapt, like we're talking about frustration, and let's go back to the context of we're working with our children in a homeschool learning environment, or we're trying to support our children in the midst of this pandemic. There's a lot happening right now. You have been forced to just change, and you're still adjusting to change, but it's not as easy for you because your brain's flexibility, that elasticity I was talking about, it's not as pliable. So even though your child, now they're feeling frustrated too. Nobody gets a get out of jail free card, but their ability to adapt, because kids thrive in routines. So sooner or later, they adapt to the online life. But then when we start talking about putting them back into school, I want you to know you need to reacquaint them to this new reality, because each time a change comes, we need to do some work to get them acquainted, get them comfortable, get them accustomed to the new routine. We know that they're going to adapt quickly, but it's going to be much easier, much smoother on their social emotional health if we have a routine in place that helps me readjust. Again, reading aloud. I know, right? How can something so simple do so many things? That's why I got a PhD in it, baby, because it's magical. Anyhow, now for you as the adult, though, it may not be as easy. And for the grandparents, look at my pink cat. It may sometimes feel absolutely painful because it's much harder for them. When you start getting into your 50s, 60s, 70s, the amount of effort change requires. And that's why, I know we talk about our elders from the sense of make sure that they don't catch COVID, make sure that they're safe. But we must also think about our elders in the sense of they may not be adapting to the change that's being forced upon them as easily as everyone else. The child, they're the most elastic. The, middle-aged adult, you still got room. No, it's not as comfortable for you, but you can still do it. But the older you get, the harder it is. So they may have issues and they may be reluctant to adapt. So I just want you to understand why some of that might be happening. Okay, I don't see any comments. I don't see any questions. So I think we're rolling. Now, like I said, there's a lot to this, and I didn't leave you high and dry. Freeze? I think we froze for a second. We're back now. Yay. You're already on the Dr. Keisha Cares channel, so woohoo, you know how to get here. Kudos to you. But if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about around executive functioning skills, that whole fight or flight response that I was talking about in those previous slides, the keynote I mentioned, I have it on a saved playlist. This is exactly where you'll find it. I screenshot, did a circle, and at the bottom, that's the language of the keynote. And if you just want to go straight to where I start talking, go to 14 minutes. That's like 1, 2, 3. I laid it out for you on a silver platter because I know your time is precious and I appreciate you. So that's how you can easily move forward if you want to learn more about that concept. Now, when our littles provide us with opportunities to practice self-care, it's not always going to be a soothing situation. I want you to leave this short talk about frustration with a different perspective of what feelings of frustration in you and your child are actually doing. They are providing you with opportunities to practice self-care. I am currently attending APA's virtual conference, and APA stands for the American Psychological Association. Baby, the research that's coming down the pipeline, we are in for social emotional health, mental health. These are the life rafts that we're going to cling to move past this moment and develop the resilience that's needed. And so when I talk about practicing self-care, I have a few things listed here, but I'm going to really delve into this. Like, I've already been collecting resources. So if you do nothing else, follow me on Instagram, because in the coming days, I'm going to start listing resources. I knew I didn't have time to fully address everything in this talk, and I didn't want to cut anything down to size, because I want you to have all of this information. It's not going to be a link. It's not going to be in the description. I'm going to list it within my social media platform, so you have it all right there. So in the interim, what can you do right now? Breathing exercises. Download the Calm app. You don't have to sign up for anything. There is no financial, hindrance. All you need is a smartphone and a way to download the app. They have offline meditation options. Within those offline meditation options, you can do timed breathing exercises. 1 minute and it goes all the way up, and then one option is like unlimited, untimed. And each time a minute passes, a bell rings. If you do breathing exercises using this app, you don't have to buy the materials. Use the app. Practice deep breathing. When I talk about talk, read, sing, play, look at any of look at last week's. Last week's was really awesome because I talked about talk, read, sing, play individually when talking about COVID worries. Well, again, I'm going to go back to my boy Daniel Tiger. Hey, PBS kids. The concept of sing, the Mad Song by Daniel Tiger. It teaches children, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And then it models taking that deep breath and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a great starting point for a young child. And then you can build on that with the breathing exercises. But those breathing exercises are for you as the parent and the child. First, you put on your oxygen mask. Remember what I said last week? You make sure your oxygen mask is firmly secure. Then you attend to other people. And so by understanding what the breathing exercises are, when you're triggered, you can take that deep breath. You can remind your child, remember the Daniel Tiger song, when you feel so mad. I've done this. I've taught this to teachers. This works, okay? And again, I'm going to be doing a lot more in this area, so just follow me on Instagram. I have social emotional guides, a lot of things that I'm going through right now and making sure that it's a resource to share with you. And now we're going to get into the Q&A. So, if you have questions, you can always drop them in the chat. If you don't, and you just like the way the rhythm is going, that's fine too. I have plenty of books to share. But that's where we're going now. So I'm going to switch my cameras. I think I did this right. Okay, let's see. Nope. Can I cheat? Yes. All right, there we go. All right, so now it's time to talk about the books as Band-Aids, right? What does that mean? What does that entail? Well, I want to start off with Saturday, okay? This author did an outstanding job of, there we go. This story talks about a mother-daughter, and, mother works 6 days a week. And the only day the mother and daughter get to spend with each other is on Saturday. And so the child is always like, as the week wears on, she's counting down because she's like, oh, I can't wait till Saturday. And this particular story, they have a special day planned. They're going to go to a puppet show. They're going to get their hair done. All of these things they've been building up as the week, matures. And, on Monday, they think of one more thing to add. And then on Wednesday, here's another thing. And by Friday, all this anticipation is there because we've been building it up. And then Saturday comes and nothing goes right. Now, we just got done talking about frustration, right? But one reason why I recommend this book is because sometimes, parents, we need to walk into a situation and consider, what if I'm wrong? A lot of times when we think about frustration or we think about, in the context of this conversation, you may have mentally been thinking about things that the child actually did. They're not perfect. But sometimes we make the mistakes. And that's why I love this story, because they get, they have all these mishaps and they finally make it to the puppet show. But mom, mom has left the tickets at home. And so they can't get in. There's no magic fairy tale ending. This is life. You don't have a ticket, you don't get to go. And so they don't get to go. They have to go home. And at that point, the mother shows frustration. And I'm going to show you this page because I just love the fact that they connected that. Mom becomes frustrated and the child gets the comfort. I invite you to have moments where you allow yourself to be comforted by your child. Because what better way to teach a child the power of relationship than allowing them to be a shoulder to you, someone they love as much. You're the epitome of love to your child. And so having those moments where you can allow them to comfort you and say, hey, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. That's a beautiful thing. And so for that reason, Saturday was one of my favorites. And I also love the fact that it's just a realistic portrayal of what it may be like for someone who isn't financially fluent. They have the budget, they can't just spend and as this situation continues to unfold, money will be tight. And so that's also, a space to begin to have those dialogues. Like, how does that make you feel, like doing those checks? So another one, the day you begin. Now, why I suggested this story was one of the themes of the story is that the children in this book are in situations where they feel vulnerable. It's the first day of school, pre-COVID, so you're actually in a classroom. And this whole idea of no one knowing who you are, people not inviting you to play. They also touch on immigration. We have a child from Venezuela and people are, he's insecure about his accent. And what I love about this story is that, we have a child who everyone else is talking about where they traveled during the summer. And her story is, I didn't go anywhere. I just read books and looked after my little sister. That's the story a lot of children are dealing with right now. They may be the children of essential workers. They may be in a situation where all they're doing is reading books. But the story talks about how you can travel through this idea of storytelling. And what she says is that there will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you until the day you begin to share your stories. And that is ultimately one of the things we do when we unlock the power of a story. When we engage in reading aloud, we're teaching a lesson to not only the children who are reading aloud with us, but to ourselves. Why it's so beneficial to share our stories. Because here's the thing I'm witnessing and experiencing even now as I do these caring conversations. as I share my stories and put it on the internet, and I got to tell you, I was terrified about that in the beginning because it's the World Wide Web and I was thinking about trolls and all this craziness. This is before things got as serious as they did or as they are now. I was still thinking about all of the things that come with trolls. But as I got out here and I began to do this work and share my story, I found out I'm not the only one that feels as passionate as I do about children's stories. I meet outstanding people every day. So that's one reason why this is a great story to use in terms of a Band-Aid, because it can heal that wound about being different. It can heal or begin to address those wounds of insecurity. And we can do it through the narrative of a third person or third perspective. My Papi has a motorcycle. This is a great book Band-Aid when we want to talk about gentrification. When we want to explain why the neighborhood is different, why certain stores aren't open right now, and how relevant is that to what we're seeing. We know our economy is going to be and has already been affected. In your neighborhood, certain places you may have went for dessert or favorite restaurants you may have loved. They may no longer be open. Let's see. Yeah, find this page so I can show you. The daughter and father are on the motorcycle, and one of their routines is to stop by this restaurant and get one of her favorite desserts. But guess what? The restaurant is closed. The ice cream parlor is no longer in business. We're going to see that. We're already seeing restaurants that your child may have had a birthday party at. It may have been a favorite family restaurant, and they may have went under during this pandemic. Let's talk about it. Let's use this book to talk about it, because one of the beautiful things about this story is that it ends with the understanding is that even though things change, we know that here in our little house, there are things that will always stay the same. Notice it says in our little house, not so much the house itself, because people may be moving, you're not tied to the location, but it's the people in that house. It's the relationships you have with the people in this house that will remain the same, whether they're still with us, whether they've transitioned into the beyond. The love that you have for them or the love that they had for you remains the same. And so that's why not only am I big on diversity, but I think this is a beautiful story. So that's one. I told you I had you covered on the Band-Aids, and I stick to an hour. So I'm going to be able to get through this at 8:53. I don't see any comments, so I think we're still doing well. But if questions come up, I'll make time for that. All right. Now, another great book, because we've been talking a lot about frustration and how to sort of walk things down when you're feeling frustrated. But sometimes you need to be on a revolution. You need to be willing to stand up and fight. And we need to talk about how you may become frustrated. Right now, there's a lot of beautiful movement around abolitionist thinking. I was thinking about what Nikolai says around the deschooling. I was thinking about decolonization, but I'm really into the revolution. But there's a lot of movement around Dr. Goade Muhammad, Cultivating Genius. I've used her books in several caring conversations. I'm all about that life. Dr. Bettina Love, Abolitionist Teaching, that network, I'm getting involved in that. And there's a lot of growing momentum around academics, educators, period, to begin to continue, not just begin, we are continuing a work that's been going on for decades to dismantle the systemic issues within our system. And this story talks about the Dakota Pipeline, and it honors the indigenous voice and explains how young children can fight to protect our water. There we go. Much better angle. Not only are the graphics beautiful, you have a deeper understanding of the connectivity because the story says we come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body. You know, that connection that shows that this external thing is a part of us. Our body is mostly composed of water. Like all of these opportunities to show how we are connected to nature. And I think no one does that more beautifully than our indigenous brothers and sisters. Like to hear them tell a story, it is a gift. It is a gift if you are able to sit and at the feet of elders, particularly if you have indigenous people telling you stories that were handed down to them. Oh, master storytellers. So to have a story that is taken from their perspective, and you begin to see the black snake, you know, as it's listed. And this whole idea of, in times, there are going to come things in life that you have to fight for. And while you're fighting, you may feel frustrated. This was absolutely a frustrating experience. To protest, to fight, have a law temporarily repealed, have a change of administration, and next thing you know, here comes that pipeline again. But look at that determination to fight. Because even though a child is talking about frustration, the solution isn't always to back down. Sometimes you have to push through. And that's why I love this story, because they show you the power of community. And you see tall, different heights, you see adults, you see children, all locked in arms, fighting together. And the title, We Are the Water Protectors, brings us all into the story. So this Band-Aid is more for the lessons that sometimes we continue to fight. Sometimes we get frustrated in the midst of the fight, but like the late legend John Lewis said, sometimes it's important that you get into good trouble, that you get into necessary trouble. And this is a great Band-Aid for dealing with the frustrations that come from good trouble, because there is such a thing. And I'm running low on time, but I'm going to get through these books. Language is such an important thing. I think of Dr. April Baker Bell. She has a lot of great research on honoring the natural language of our children, our black and brown babies. Like, I don't like to limit the idea that there's only one way to tell a story, only one language in which to tell a story. And so that's why I recommend Crowns, because the language says, the cute girl in the class across the way won't be able to keep her pretty eyes off you. Her friends will giggle and whisper, girl, he's so fine. Yeah, that's what they'll say. Remind your child that their language is beautiful. The turn of phrase, I don't know what the cultural backgrounds are of the people who may be hearing this, but we will always look for books that reflect our children. Like Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop says, our books will be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. This book is a bandage that reflects the mirror of language by celebrating how awesome you feel after your trip to the barbershop. Even now, it's still a great thing to have that experience. We are now in the final minute. I really hope you had a great time. To the people who are on the live stream, thank you for joining. If you had a great time, feel free to say something in the comments. Let me know. But I really enjoyed spending this time with you and sharing these books. In the few seconds that I have left, I'll hold off on it. Because if I start talking, I know I'm going to need more than 30 seconds. But in the ones that I've shared, I will list all of these books in the description so you'll have access to them. But I want you to know that frustration is a part of the experience, but the way in which we calm ourselves down, how we begin to self-regulate, I'm going to have plenty of resources on my Instagram. So thank you for your time. Have a great night. Bye.